I wanted to share these thoughts with you from one of my favorite locations. For me, it reminds me of the land of Narnia in C.S. Lewis's books, The Chronicles of Narnia. It's located just up the hill from Refuge Ranch. That's down that way, just about a 2-minute walk. I walk this way every morning on my morning prayer walk up the path. I go past this area. So it's a favorite spot for me, and I wanted to share these moments with you here. I suspect you have favorite locations too, places you like to go to and spend time at. And if I'm guessing right, you're probably not at that place right now. You know, that's true for all of us. We're not at the place we want to be. There's always circumstances and situations that are far from ideal, and we wish we were a different place or that we were in a different set of circumstances. One shared circumstance that we all have at this time is the pandemic. It's impacted all of us now, for some in a very serious way, of being sick with the illness or having lost a loved one or an acquaintance from the illness. But for every single one of us, it's impacted us, and we wish it would go away. We don't like being in the midst of a pandemic. But there are other circumstances that you probably wished were different as well. It might be financial circumstances you wish were different. Maybe a personal relationship that you wished would be different, a marital status that would be different. You might want a different job. You may want to live a different place or in a different home. There's many different ways in which we would like things to be other than what they are. Well, there's a man in the Bible who felt much the same way, and yet his response was beautiful, and we can learn a lot from it. The man was a man healed by Jesus. His story is recorded in 3 of the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. We'll be looking at the Gospel of Mark, chapter 5. Jesus and his disciples had headed across the lake of Galilee, the Sea of Galilee, going to the eastern shore, a Gentile area. And when they got off the boat, there was this man who was possessed by demons. A horrendous life he had been living. Let me just read from Mark chapter 5, verses 3 through 5 to have Mark describe to you the kind of life this man was living. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day, among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. What a hell-on-earth existence this man experienced. But Jesus healed him, cast the demons out into a herd of about 2,000 pigs, who then rushed into the Sea of Galilee and drowned. But he was healed and in his right mind. The tenders of the pigs, the herdsmen of the pigs, were alarmed by all of this and ran to town and reported what they had seen. And so he and other townspeople, or the herdsmen and other townspeople, returned, and apparently they were afraid of Jesus. Maybe afraid he'd do something like that to them, like he had done to the herd of swine. Who knows what their fears were, but they wanted Jesus out of there. And so Jesus obliged them, and he and his disciples headed toward their boat to go back across the Sea of Galilee. And then it's interesting to see the response of the man that Jesus has healed. We read in chapter 5 of Mark, verse 18, as Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Well, of course he wanted to go with Jesus and his disciples. Jesus had given him a new life. I mean, it was such a different life. He was in his right mind. He was the way he should be. And he was indebted to Jesus. He just admired Jesus, wanted to go and be with Jesus. Plus, you have to admit that it would be a lot easier to kind of pick up his life following Jesus rather than staying where he was and trying to live down the bad reputation he had as a crazy cemetery man. And so, yes, he wanted to go with Jesus. But what's interesting is what Jesus said to him. Go home to your family and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. Jesus told him to stay there, to live out his life there amongst his family and his friends and his acquaintances and tell them what Jesus had done. Interestingly, Jesus had to leave himself. He was too much for the people. But if this man were to stay, who had been healed by Jesus, maybe he could get someplace with some of these folks and convince them of Jesus and how they should turn to Jesus. But at any rate, the man wanted to go with Jesus, and Jesus said no. Now this is really interesting. Here you have a man Jesus healed, and usually when he healed people, he told them not to say anything about what he had done for them. And many times he would ask them to follow him, literally follow him. He did that with the 12 disciples and some others too. But in this case, he told the man, don't follow me and tell everybody about me. Why the difference? Well, first of all, this man lived in a Gentile area. It's called the Decapolis. It was a collection of 10 or so Greek towns. And so it was Greek. And so it was okay for the word to spread about Jesus there. Jesus was concerned in the Jewish area on the other side of the Sea of Galilee that they might, by force, want to make him Messiah and King. And he didn't want that, of course. He knew his destiny was the cross. And so, no, this was a case where he wanted it known that he had done this. And he told the man to stay here instead of following him so he could do that work here. What's interesting is that this man was following Jesus. He was following Jesus' wishes. He was following Jesus' command. He was being obedient and following Jesus by staying where he was instead of following Jesus physically. And so he did. And we read this amazing account, the last verse of this section in verse 20. So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. And so he lived out his life there, proclaiming Jesus amongst his family and his friends. That's where Jesus wanted him to carry out his call in a less than ideal place. He would rather have gone with Jesus and been a follower of Jesus and had the adventure of going all over the place with Jesus. But he was obedient and he stayed where he was supposed to stay in less than ideal circumstances where he had to live down his past. And in so doing, he lived a great life to the glory of God and for his own good and the good of others. So what kind of circumstances are you in that are far from ideal? Now maybe God wants to change some of those soon or maybe later. And so it's okay to pray, Lord, help me find a different job. Lord, help me to find a different house. Lord, heal me of this illness. So it's okay to want to move beyond bad circumstances. But sometimes God has us stay, at least for the time being, in less than ideal circumstances because he has a plan and a purpose for us there. And so today, this day, you have to live out God's call for you here, where you are, not someplace else, doing something else. Maybe tomorrow or the next day or whenever, but for right now, it's here and now that you have to carry out God's will. Remember this, that you are the right person in the right place at the right time to do the right thing. May God bless you.